This is Dream Chasers, Episode 8 with Allyson McDougal. Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Adam Carswell, and welcome to Dream Chasers, Interviews with the Future. On Dream Chasers, we interview individuals with supernatural amounts of potential based on early success in their careers. Thank you for tuning in. Now let's get straight to the interview. Hey guys, this is Adam Carswell, and I'm joined today with Allyson McDougal, founder and CEO of Goo-Ru. Goo-Ru is a consulting firm helping startups scale their business. Allyson, thank you for being here. And is there anything else you want to tell us about Goo-Ru before we get started?
Adam, thank you so much for having me. No, I think you hit it on the head. We're a consulting firm that helps, like you said, startups accelerate to scale and ideally either qualify for funding or fully get off the ground where they're a viable business starting to, generate some revenue.
Very cool. So with that being said now, how long have you been a consultant?
Great question. I would say formally a business owner consultant, a little under a year. We started formally was incorporated October 2017, but started to actually pursue and gain clients in December 2017. But prior to that, was always in the corporate field and did very similar things for the clients that I worked with while I was working for corporations. And so I guess I've always considered myself a consultant, but from the formal entrepreneurial aspect, I am a little under a year of being on my own.
Right. And I heard you, did you mention December 2017 or 2016? When did you say was when you first really hit this full time?
December 2017.
2017. Okay. So I was going to say, so December 2017, that sounds like when you realized this is something you wanted to take to the next level. Is that accurate?
Exactly. I actually was working on the business model a year prior. It had a completely different focus then. So this whole startup acceleration service organically happened. So if you say, we've been a consulting firm helping businesses solve their problems since December, but truly, the focus on working with startups, making sure we hit those key metrics to either be categorized as a legitimate viable business or, qualify for either a seed round or a series, raise. That really kind of happened organically within the first quarter of 2018 when I acquired my very first client, Work2. So yeah, it's in real time. And it has been a whirlwind and a lot of evolution, but this is clearly where we were supposed to be, and this is where we're gaining all of our traction. So, yeah.
Right. Can you explain to us a little bit about working with that first client? And sounds like the blessing, that you mentioned that you had of it being organic. What was that like?
We originally started off, I come from a sales background. I started my career at two major sales organizations, Xerox, and then migrated over to Canon over the years. Rose up the ranks pretty quickly into management roles and then a regional role, basically supporting different business units to be successful in offering a product that wasn't very well known. During that process, I was realizing there was a lot of holes in the industry on helping professionals basically scale those particular products that they were interested in and the delivery and the actual tactics and execution on how to get it done. So that's actually how Goo-Ru's business model started off. I actually wanted to help establish in small, technology companies in its truest form, software companies, be able to get their products out to the market in a modern, efficient way. And that's what I spent a year working on. The copywriting, different techniques, coming up with different processes, kind of taking some of the skill sets that I've acquired over my professional career postgraduate, formulating that into a variety of different services. So where I say this is truly organic, it is and it's not. I guess if I look back at the original model, the seeds were there. I guess that's just the one flower that bloomed and blossomed overnight into an entire garden. I remember the client I found them on Instagram, actually, and okay. I was actually considering using them as a service for myself. So the platform is called work to, and the concept is being able to work out of restaurants and get like discounts and, during their off-peak hours when things are typically slow, and being able to get work done and meet other professionals similar to yourself. That's how it was originally advertised. And so I actually built my business out of a cafe near my house. So it really resonated with me when I saw it. I remember I looked it up, just thinking of becoming a member, trying to find pricing over the locations. They looked big, and I found out that they were local and that they only had 2 locations. So in the moment, honestly, being an entrepreneur is truly, how hard are you willing to hustle? I remember I was still building my website at the time. And once I was digging through their site, I was like, oh, I bet based off of what they do, I can help them with that. And I actually considered working with them just as kind of a stopgap until I started to acquire larger scale software clients. And because I knew I could help them scale their company quickly. And as I got immersed and pitched them and got completely indoctrinated into their entire platform, it kind of happened to me one day when I think, putting together a report for them of, oh my gosh, this is actually what we do. It's super easy. It's something I can do in my sleep. It takes effort, but there's a difference of putting forth effort on something that you're not inherently good at versus something that just naturally comes to you.
Exactly.
And it just thrives. So that's kind of the history of the acquisition of me working with Work2. And since I actually had to wait to reach out to them because my website wasn't completed, and I didn't want to look like, some fledgling startup. So I stalked them for like a month and a half until my site was done. And like the last day, my developer was like, oh, we need a few more days. I was like, forget it. It's fine. It's enough where I could email them.
Right.
And I reached out, and it's history ever since. And so they're my biggest client right now, and things have grown tremendously. And they actually help me craft Goo-Ru's narrative on what we do, what our services are, and what we thrive at.
Right.
So they're kind of one of the reasons why it's organic, but we found our space, and we're thoroughly enjoying this process.
That's so cool. And I like how you mentioned it all started at a cafe right by where you live.
Right. It's literally Junction Bakery is a place in Alexandria. I had a corner. They were great to me. They knew exactly what I ordered. They knew when I was done working, they would always send over a happy hour glass of wine. Like, that's how this whole thing started out of that place.
Nice. What would you say are the downsides to being in this industry, and what are the positives?
Starting with the positives, the freedom and flexibility. So coming from, and I didn't have a classic corporate job where I was in the office every single day. Ever since college, I was always in that sales arena. So I did have the ability to kind of work from home and things like that since undergrad or post-undergrad. But there's a whole nother level of freedom and flexibility to be able to focus your efforts and energy into what you truly enjoy. And I know that sounds incredibly cliche, because I feel like you hear that whenever people talk about their businesses, but when you're in it, you get it. If you're doing what you truly enjoy, having the bandwidth in the space to put forth 120% in growing that is such a great experience. Honestly, pushing yourself to the brink, I never knew I had the ability, the discipline, wherewithal, and the strength to kind of persevere through some of the trials and tribulations to get a business off the ground, while you're still trying to, make ends meet, make dollars, and also present it in a certain type of way. So that's kind of a twofold of the negatives of everything that you run into, because there's no way that you will be able to predict what the problems could be. But it's also a positive of when you really do get through that storm or issue, or some things are big, some things are small, to see that you really came out on the other side and you either created a solution or you learned something from it. I would say those are the two biggest ones. The last positive is, it all depends on people, whether they have egos or not, but to be able to kind of see where you started And in no way, shape, or form are we, this flourishing forest with like 150 employees in a multi-floor office. But to get to the point where people are now contacting you, where, people are requesting your services, and you kind of have to be a little bit of discriminatory on, you only have so much bandwidth, or your team only has so much bandwidth. So making sure you only sign on those that you really feel as though that is worth each other's time and that you can really help them. That's it's empowering. And, whether everyone has some element of the ego and a little bit of the ego stroke, to know that you, separated from a secure corporate environment to really doing something on your own and committing to it. And in a little under a year, you're at a point where, you're starting to see things flourish and grow. So I would say those are the positives. Some of the negatives are, like I said, reality. You will run into so many different things you didn't even think about in going through those battles. No one likes being in pain. No one likes, going through discomfort. And I was actually talking to this with a friend of mine, and I was like, I feel like I think of myself back in January and February. And if you look at this as like running towards a cliff and jumping off, that was like running, then you jump, and naturally you're trying to like grab branches, and then you make the decision to stop grabbing branches. And then now you're kind of panicking because it's like, wow, you're falling. And now I'm just free falling. And it's like, I'm so far outside of my comfort zone, but I think I'm at a point where I'm just settled, and it's just like, just fly, like trying to fight it. There's no point. And it's clearly what it's meant to be. But having that initial run, jump, and almost giving up and just letting it be what it is probably the scariest thing. And no one enjoys going through that. And that takes a lot of mental perseverance. So being in that space is never fun. But you really have to believe in yourself, and you have to keep positive people around you. And the reality check is you kind of have to have a quality product and be able to sell it and pitch it where people buy into it. And if you have those skills, you'll see things work quickly, or quicker than you expected. So I would say that, and also just the insecurity of not knowing what the future holds. I'm a classic millennial that, wants certain things at certain times, and not knowing what it holds, and, making the decision to not re-enter the life of you can almost create your trajectory was a big risk. And, so again, I still grapple with that at some days of like, does this make sense? But
right.
once you look back at it and see how far things have come, how things have kind of just lined up, it really was meant to be, and it was perfect timing. So it's a lot of mental perseverance and readjusting your thought process on just staying committed and hoping that you turn into one of those movie stories where they show, the struggle when they first got started, or one of my favorite shows, Silicon Valley, of when they first got started, and then like 7 episodes in, they get funded, and they're like this bigger thing than they ever expected themselves to be. So that's all I just keep in the back of my mind.
Right. That's so cool to hear all, because for me, everything you just said, it's like you're speaking my language. I can relate. And to be completely honest, it's not something that I would say our society at large is not taught or trained to think in a way where, as you referenced, you just go jump off a cliff and, hope that you're going to be all right. But that's like kind of what it is. And then once you can do that and embrace that fear and look it, straight in the eyes and realize that everything is going to be okay, which it sounds like for you, which is very impressive. You've basically been able to overcome that fear early on. And that, that's probably why I was like, man, I got to have this girl on the show. Like you could tell got it. So just to reiterate everything you just said, I couldn't agree more.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't think we are, we're in a time where being an entrepreneur or being like a founder is so and everyone kind of wants to create something. And I'm also an extreme realist, and that's probably just from my corporate training of not all ideas will work. I don't necessarily use the statistics of like, things are destined to fail. I think a lot of it has to do with training, making good business decisions, understanding, how do you capitalize quickly so you can, minimize as many pitfalls as possible. And everyone likes to talk about it and work towards it, typically with the security of like a job or something like that. But the decision to actually do it is, I would say, a positive and a negative, because you also have to have the beginning phases are the hardest when you don't have a client, when you are building, when you are pulling out of your savings, or if someone doesn't have a savings, you might, tap into a 401k or ask for money from an investor, depending on, what type of service or product it is that you're offering. And people could look at you like, what are you doing? Why are you leaving the security of insurance and a company and a high-paying job and travel or things like that if you don't have anything to show for it? And that's where I could say that could be negative. You don't know how to manage your mental. And it could be the people who love you the most. But it's truly because they love you the most. And most people aren't trained to say, this makes sense. But it's funny how things shift, because once things start to kind of pick up, then everyone's like, oh my gosh, this looks great. It's going to be successful. So, being in controlling that mental space of understanding the beginning is truly the hardest. But that's also when you're falling. That's also when you're grasping, trying to grasp at those branches. That's also when people might question your decisions. And if you can just make it out of that and then get one nice little small win, which was, me acquiring that first client, that's when you can kind of breathe a little bit and then, kind of regather your thoughts and then understand now you're entering on a very long journey. But just make sure you pace yourself. So
good. Where do you see yourself in 3 years?
That's a question. I see the company, now that this is our space and our stride, I see the company growing into working with a variety of different clients. By year 3, I would like to, have a larger staff, maybe even have silos and vertical markets of startup industries that we support. My natural ability, it tends to be heavy consumer-based, lifestyle-based, tech platforms or organizations. That's my area of expertise that I feel very comfortable with working. But there's a lot of other opportunities, whether of tech platforms coming out, fintech and, healthcare, even things in like the sports arena. And I would love to, have someone similar to myself spearhead those initiatives. And we really start to grow this company as the place that you come to as the alternative accelerator. I think the concept in terms of accelerator in the startup life or era, if you want to call it, is I don't really know if they're really accelerators. I mean, they give you a place to work, they introduce you to people, they can, help you kind of build your business, but having someone that actually gets into the weeds, pull back, whatever metrics that it is that needs to be done, or even creating metrics that it needs for your business to look like a viable entity, but then also providing you that internal structure, process that allows you to scale it, be a viable job environment, because there's always that stigma of startups being the Wild West. That's unnecessary. It doesn't have to be that way if you implement certain processes early, where your investors feel comfortable that they'll actually get the return on their investment in an appropriate amount of time, and that this company, once they get a couple $1 million, won't perish because they don't necessarily know how to use the resources because the infrastructure and the habits weren't laid out early. I say our services are truly meant to accelerate a business because we use our tried and true sales skills to figure out how do you forecast, how do you obtain these metrics, what's the timeline to obtain these metrics, and then just getting out there and doing it. But then dissecting it and making it small enough where it's doable and digestible. For my clients, they have a goal of hitting X amount of members by the end of the year. So I broke that thing down in old school sales format of like, look, if we want to do this, let's break it down week by week. And if we don't hit this number, this week, how do we make up for the 5 that we lost this week and plus the additional, weekly quota? Making things attainable so it doesn't look like these daunting numbers that are great in theory, but there's really no tangible plan on how to execute and get it done. So that's how I really consider us to become and be viewed as an accelerator. And people in the startup industry, whether it's investors or, companies, feel like they can come to us, and once they go through Goo-Ru, once they work with us, they're a viable, investable business that you will make your return and ideally eventually be, deemed as like a kingmaker of the ones we come up with, and those that we work with work and they scale rapidly. I'm big on instant gratification. So that's the one thing I want my clients to feel, whether they're small goals or big goals, that they see things trending in a positive direction as quick as possible.
That's great. We're getting to the end of the interview here. I wanted you to keep going, but I want to keep this as concise as possible and also intriguing. So those who are listening, they have a reason. As you can see, if you contact Allyson, she's got plenty of knowledge to share with you. But I want to ask you these 3 last fun questions.
Sure.
The first one is, what is your favorite shoe? The second one is what is your favorite view? And the last one is, what is your favorite restaurant?
Favorite shoe, you mean by like brand?
I'd say, yes, let's go with brand. So for example, for me, I would probably say something like, like an athletic shoe, like Nike or something like that. So. Well, even though I'm in this, new startup space, I still, again, was corporately trained in dressing to the nines. So I would definitely say my favorite brand of shoe would, of course, be Christian Louboutin. Okay.
Of all heel heights, even though they're extremely uncomfortable, they're just stunning shoes. You, are you from what do you mean by that?
Like if you're on vacation or maybe somewhere here in the DC area, somewhere where you go and you stand and you go, wow, I'm never going to forget this.
One of my favorite views, it is a friend of mine's condo in Roslyn. It actually is right next to the CED building where the Le Meridian is, and there's condos over there. I think they're called Waterview. And it's the best image of Washington, D.C. It's probably 180 from Georgetown University all the way over to the National Harbor in Fort Washington. It's stunning. And then you get a clean shot of the Kennedy Center. So I would say that's my favorite view in the area for sure.
Okay. And your favorite restaurant? It doesn't have to be here in DC. It could be anywhere in the world, but if it is here, then we'd like to know.
Well, I'm a native from here, so I'm always going to put, prop DC up as best possible. I have 2 right now. I would say my classic tried and true is Fiola Mare in Georgetown. But there's another that has slowly started to make me very happy, off of 14th Street, Maiden. Foods, flavors are insane. The ambiance is perfect, so fun, kind of in an alley. And if you you can hang out there, it's such a great vibe. They play the best music, James Brown, old school Motown. But always a staple if I ever have friends or family in town, I always take to the Fiola Mare.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm taking notes. I'm going to have to check out both those places because I haven't been there yet. Hopefully my girlfriend likes them. I think she will. She'll love either or. Very different vibes, but they're great. Right. I trust your vibes. I know she'll agree with it. Cool. That's all the time we have for today. Allyson, thanks for being on the show. Any final comments?
No, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you, even feeling as though that I'm someone that you would want to interview. And if, anyone ever has questions or ideas or, wants to bounce war stories of startup life or consulting life, I'm here. Creating a community and a tribe of people that all kind of experiencing the same thing makes this process so much easier versus being on an island by yourself. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yep. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.